Hello knitters, Barbara Benson here. I am an independent knitwear designer who also likes to make knittertaining videos here on Watch Barbara Knit. Please make sure to check in the description below where you will find all my social media links, including the Watch Barbara Knits Facebook group, links to my pattern pages where you can get my patterns, and of course my Patreon page where you can support me if you would like to. Today's video is a little different. It's something I've never done before, but I'm trying to shake things up in this new year. Not this past week, that was the Knit Crate unboxing, but the week before, I did a swatch of a 3-stitch ribbed Japanese style cinch stitch, which was a lot of fun, and I think y'all, the feedback that I got in the comments was great, and y'all seem to have fun with it as well. There were several people who said they really liked the idea of it, but they really thought it'd be fun to do it in the round, like to do a hat or a cowl or something like that, which I also think too. And I replied in the comments that there's some things you have to think about when you're doing that. The way I did it, it was set up so you could work it flat, and there are a couple little quirks that would take to work it in the round. Specifically, the way that the cinch stitches interact, they were interlocking. They alternated, but they were also interlocking. And so I'm going to explain to you coming later how that you would do it, but it takes a little bit. It's not hard. I'm not saying it's hard. It just takes a couple extra steps to make it work, which is why I stuck with working it flat. And honestly, when I'm designing patterns, I try my best to avoid that kind of interlocking thing that's going to jump the end beginning of round thing, because it just makes for a couple extra steps, and I am inherently a little bit lazy and I want things to work out a specific way and not have to fiddle quite so much. So I thought today I would show you the opposite of fiddling how I take an existing stitch pattern as a designer and then play with it and see what other things you can do with that stitch pattern, developing different stitch patterns from that base stitch pattern, tweaking it, changing it, and coming up with something that can look very different. And I think it's the same thing that a lot of designers do, is using a stitch out of a stitch dictionary as a jumping off point, and then manipulating that stitch and playing with it and seeing how you can change it and, make it your own and have some fun with it. We're gonna cut to, and you're gonna see it's on my table, and it's a little bit of arts and crafts, but I thought it would be fun and maybe help y'all see how I think through things, and maybe give yourself, some ideas for you that you might want to play with. So here we go. Here is the original swatch. As you can see, it's got this fun kind of at an angle bias action going on. It makes this really neat texture. And this is the original chart that I showed y'all. And you can see how I laid it out so that we have these framing stitches. We have the slip stitch, and then a column of purls, and then a column of purls and a slip stitch to serve as a selvage on either side. And I worked this stitch inside it. You can see how this is the selvage, and it goes up, and these really, so this stitch here and this stitch here, these two really aren't a part of the overall pattern. Those are just there to make it work flat. Now, for the people who asked if it could be converted into the round, what happens is, to convert it into the round, essentially you remove all of this, and all you have is this here. To make it a little more clear, here. So this is the same thing. You can see this here. See how they stack? But to convert it into the round, what happens is because they're interlocking, and what I mean by interlocking, so this is knit, purl, knit in columns. And when you do this second cinch stitch, you're taking the last stitch of this cinch stitch and the first stitch of this cinch stitch and cinching them together. So it goes here, 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 here. That's what's happening. And you can see it in the swatch. You can see that it goes up into this one, and then this one goes up into this one. So you're kind of making these little X's, if you will. And if you work it in the round, and you can always tell on a chart, if it's worked in the round, the numbers only go up one side, whereas if it's worked flat, your numbers are on both sides. See how this, if this box represents how many stitches we have these little guys sticking out on either side that are like, wait a minute, this doesn't work because it doesn't fall within the repeat. So essentially this stitch, it's this stitch. See how we've got 1, 2 columns here and the 2 columns here? This and this are the same thing. So you run into problems. This stitch really shouldn't be here. I just wanted to show it to you. It interlocks. So this would lock in over here. What that means is since there's no blank column, there's no column of stitches that aren't involved in one or the other cinch stitch at any given time when you're doing repeats. So what will happen is there will be a point in time where your beginning of round is going to fall in the middle of a cinch stitch. So what you'll have to do is, as you're tootling along and knitting this, you'll get to here and you'll need 3 stitches to perform your cinch stitch, but you'll only have 2. So what you'll have to do is slip those 2 stitches, remove your end of round marker, put all the stitches back, make the cinch stitch, take the first 2 back to your right hand needle, place your marker, and then slip the stitch that so it's this juggling. It's not hard. It's not impossible. It's just involved. There's juggling involved, and it's not quite as straightforward as simply knitting it in the round. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. But what I wanted to show you is how we can play with these components, essentially looking at the cinch stitch, and we're doing perpetrating a little arts and crafts. So I made these little guys. So this is our cinch stitch, right? So it's the cinch stitch on the right side, and then on the following row, it's the ribbing. So this is what it looks like from the front. If you're working it flat, this would be purl, knit, purl. If you're working it in the round, it's knit, purl, knit. Whatever it is, it's creating a ribbing. So I made this. This is our blank slate of ribbing, right? So this is just, instead of trying to knit through it, which would take a long time, I'm showing you in this chart. So to replicate this, what we would have, and I'm going to just leave that there. We're going to have this stitch, and then this stitch, and then this stitch, right? So that's row 1. And then when we get to our next, to get them to interlock, see this stitch is going here, and then this stitch is going here, and then this stitch is going here. And again, we have the hanging off the end. So what it is that would be over here. But we have too many stitches. So it's just an illustration. So again, we're interlocking, which means we can't really, it can be done in the round, but it's going to take juggling. Now, what else can we do with this particular field of cinch stitches and ribbing? So to get rid of the interlocking problem, the first thing you could do is simply shift these over. Right? There we go. And what happens is then we have these empty purl rows, these purl ditches is what I normally think of them as. And those are sort of places where you could put you could locate your beginning of round in between any of these columns, and you wouldn't have to worry about manipulating on your joins. And especially if you're doing like DPNs, that could get a little bit annoying. And so I grabbed a needle just to swatch this, because the thing is, having these stack on top of each other is going to be similar to having a cable stack. And I wasn't sure how it was going to look. And I was figuring it would tighten up. So I grabbed a larger needle and did it. So we have our original. And then here is, instead of them interlocking, with them stacked on top of each other, and in a looser gauge, I used a bigger needle so we could see it. And you see it completely changes, simply shifting those stitches. One stitch to the left completely changes how it looks. Now you're getting this kind of interesting column effect. And since I did it on bigger needles, it's lacier. If you did it on the same needles, I'm pretty sure it's going to be super tight. And so you've got every right side row, you're working the cinch stitch. So it's cinch, 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 cinch. And it's getting this, it's kind of interesting. It's worth playing with. And that's what we're doing. We're playing. So that's with every row being cinched. It's a little dense. Maybe you feel like it's a little busy. So then what you could do is take these guys out and work just plain old ribbing. So we have our cinch stitch in its return row, and then do just a ribbing row, and then a cinch stitch in its return row. And we could just keep on stacking, but give them a little space in between the cinch stitches, so it's not going to be so dense. I went down to a smaller needle so that we could see what it would look like. And there. So there you can see we're still getting columns, but they've got like an opening. They have a little bit more room to breathe, and it's on a smaller needle, but it doesn't look that much tighter, simply because this, having the cinch stitch every row, tightens it up. So, and those are kind of fun. You've just got these columns again. So now let's remind you, all we're doing is shifting these cinch stitches little bits. So we started here, and then we got these interesting kind of columns, and now we're into these columns. But let's revisit the interlocking concept, or at least the alternating concept. We're still avoiding interlocking. How can we avoid interlocking and still make it easy to work in the round, but have the alternating? And believe it or not, the solution is easier than you would think. All you have to do is move these up. So now we're alternating. So on this row, it goes cinch stitch, ribbing, cinch stitch, return row. And then on the next one, and what we would do is this guy would be over here, and this guy would be over here. And what we've done is created, it's still alternating, but we still have these open columns where we could put a beginning or end of round. So we're alternating, but we're not interlocking. And for that, I actually did a little swatch in a different yarn. That's upside down. So there. So instead of having columns,
where they're all stacked and all the cinch stitches are lining up horizontally. This makes it alternate, and they interlock in a different, they since this one is going here, it's really aesthetically pleasing. And so let's compare. So there it is, just stacked on top of each other, and there it is alternating, but not interlocking. This is interlocking with no breathing space in between. We're interlocking on every row, and so you can see how dense that is visually. Flexibly, it's about the same. So, how cool is that? I think it's cool, and this is one of my favorite things to do. I usually do it on my computer. I'm using my charting software, and you just pick up these blocks and move them around and see what you can achieve. Since we're on a ribbing thing, so this goes back to interlocking. It could be interesting. So if you did interlocking here, and this I don't have a swatch for because I'm literally just playing with it right now, and then you did and then let's say we left a ribbing here. So then we could do, how would this work? Okay, so that there, this here, so they're still interlocking, but only in columns. I feel like I need to swatch this now. Or maybe one of y'all will swatch it. Oop, I hit my camera. Sorry about that. Hold still. Boop. It'll calm down in a minute. So, there we go. I don't know if y'all can see this, but what I did is created these interlocking columns. So this is going to go boop, 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 boop. And this is going to go boop, 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 boop. But then we have this. This is, again, an empty column where we could place a beginning of round. Ooh, that's kind of cool.
I want to encourage you to play like I was showing. Like I played you. I actually made just a single page PDF that has the flat ribbed, just like the little chart, the blank play space, and then it's going to have the little cinch stitches where you can cut them out yourselves. I'm going to put the PDF, I was thinking how I could share it with you. I'm going to put it in the file section of the Watch Barbara Knit Facebook group. So if you want to come over and join the group, or if you're already a member of the group, you can go into the file section and find this file, download it yourself, print it out, cut out those cinch stitches, and play with it yourself and see how it works. And maybe you can come up with something that I didn't think of, and you can swatch and share your swatch. It just, I thought you might want to play too. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you'd like to see more like this, if you liked how it worked. And of course, if you like this video, please give it the thumbs up, click that like button. And if you would like to be notified whenever I upload a new video, please subscribe to my channel, click that bell, and you'll get alert whenever a new video gets uploaded. Thank you very much.